Before I start this video, I wanted to give a quick shout out to Deadbeat TV, whose encouraging words just inspired me to do more Carmilla videos. Their stubborn insistence of continuing to call me German, despite having pointed out that I am in fact Dutch, is astounding. I hope my dick-mouthed German mumble isn't too distracting for your tone-deaf monolingual ears. This one's for you, buddy. Okay, I had to get that sarcasm out of my system at the beginning so it doesn't poison me the rest of this video, because I do want to have a more open and nuanced dialogue about Carmilla. Partly because I was inspired by much more talented film analyzers on YouTube, but also because the Carmilla franchise has grown quite big and simply sending my way out of it does not do justice to the many thoughts and feelings I have. So let's talk. And what better place to start than the beginning?
Okay. Don't know how many of you are new and how many of you have been with us from the start, but I am Laura Hollis.
At first I wanted to dismiss this introduction as not quite part of the film, because it's a loose entity. It's not a framing device in which Laura introduces the story. Neither does it do anything to set up the movie. It only gives us a summary of what has already happened. Obviously this is an attempt to let new viewers catch up, but I don't think it's the best way to do it. Usually the advice given is to introduce the plot and characters within the narrative. What's happening here is a shortcut, and a lazy one at that. It's boring for the majority who already watched the web series, and for potential new viewers it's just a complete info dump. I believe the movie should and is able to stand in its own right. Moreover, this exposition becomes double unnecessary when 5 minutes later Laura starts vlogging about Carmilla's re-birthday. And although I find this scene still a bit sloppy and definitely too long, it does communicate multiple important key points that are needed to understand the story yet to come. Laura is a longtime vlogger, there's already a considerable backstory, there are more people involved than just Laura and Carmilla used to be a vampire, but now she isn't anymore. This way you keep new viewers in the loop and give your Creeper veterans something new to chew on, like what everyone is up to these days. So these first 2 minutes, completely unnecessary. Now this is an opening shot. This gets me hooked. Yes, even with the totally fake lightning. Shh, don't worry about it. It's still an indie movie. Unfortunately, this is not the only moment the movie has an exposition problem. It appears to be a bit of a theme. And I don't want to blame it all on bad writing, so let's find that nuance. Since Carmilla started as a web series, there is a lot of exposition to be expected. Most events don't occur on camera, thus the characters retell them. Important to remember here is that this already shows a bias filter, and is a narrative device most web series writers play with, usually to show the flaws of their own main characters. The Lizzie Bennet Diaries did this with a concept called costume theater, where they dress up as other people and play out certain events, clearly showing the prejudice in Pride and Prejudice. Lizzie constantly mocks Darcy by retelling the story through her biased view.
This dance is preposterous. I hate dancing. It's a waste of time, like saying nice things to people.
But this narrative gets challenged by the characters around her, making this a journey and character arc for Lizzie to face her own misplaced judgments and realizing she was wrong. We see a very similar pattern in Carmilla. Especially in the first season, the action is not on screen, but mostly told about in hindsight. The format of one steady camera makes it difficult to incorporate all the action within such a confined space. Although it also has to do with the low budget nature of web series. By season 3 they clearly had some budget increase, which is visible in scenes like this awesome fight sequence. Therefore possibly the biggest difference to translate a web series to a movie is within the function of the camera. In web series the camera needs to be justified in universe. The first time Laura turns on the camera is for a video project for a journalism class. She continues filming when her roommate Betty disappears. So like custom theater, what we get to view is biased. Laura Hollis is our narrator and we get to see her point of view. In movies we don't get this direct addressing of the camera because there's no camera in universe. The movie appears to struggle with this translation, which becomes abundantly clear in our main character Laura Hollis. And it makes a lot of sense too when you think about it, because suddenly the lens Laura is viewed through is not her own. While Laura was the narrator in her vlogs, she now is viewed on equal par with the rest of the characters and loses the control how she is viewed. We can argue whether Laura was really in control of the camera and editing process, especially during season 3, but at the very least we can conclude that the vlogs happened on Laura's terms. It was her room, her spot, She kept the viewers up to date. But once you lose that framework, Laura suddenly reads very bossy. The camera doesn't automatically take her side anymore, so we get scenes like this.
Look, for all we know, they lured us in and trapped us here. Are we seriously gonna trust them?
What happened to them wasn't their fault. They were girls just like you or me with their whole lives ahead of them. If this ritual helps them and keeps Carm human, we have to try it.
Here I had at least expected Mel to drop a "Who the hell made you the leader, Hollis?" Or what about this argument between Laura and Perry?
So we have to find Elle before she gets to Charlotte. Then Perry can find the spell to put your
Laura,
spark
what are you
back.
talking about? We have to find Laugh first.
Of course. We have to find both of them. But if we lose Elle now, then all of us
We
are going to
can
be trapped
find
here.
Elle later. Laugh comes first.
We can't just let her take Carmilla's life.
Why isn't Perry going against her? After all, Carmilla is standing right the fuck there. As a vampire, sure, but she already proved to be perfectly capable of sarcasm. La Fontaine, on the other hand, is nowhere near, and at this point, Perry has no idea if she will ever find them. I'm not saying Perry should have won the argument, but both of them have different priorities here. At the very least, Perry couldn't have given in so easily. But no. Even when the images aren't filtered through Laura's lens, her voice still matters the most somehow. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Laura in the web series was shown to be perfect, but her stubbornness and flaws had a certain charm about them. Talking out loud and mumbling in front of a camera is not so weird, because in a way you're talking to an audience. Doing the same thing in a movie?
Old-timey and weird. Stuck in an endless loop of someone else's damage. Classic me.
Something tells me I'm gonna like this dream.
It becomes awkward very quickly. But that's the trap, right? Not having Laura talk to herself might do injustice to the rambly Laura Hollis we know and love from the series. On the one hand, you can have Laura show her reaction instead of tell it, but on the other hand, it may feel out of character. That's a difficult balance to strike. Sadly, Laura is not the only one. All the characters seem to have a disease called explaineritis. I was especially unimpressed with Keir standing in as the dumb audience member who has no idea what's going on ever.
That wasn't Laura?
Carmilla's epic first love.
Also not Laura?
Now that they finally have the budget and locations to show events instead of tell them, I feel like trying to stay loyal to the series actually held them back. When they showed something, it usually got retold nonetheless. Not only causing exposition problems, but also pacing and tonal problems. Take this scene, for example.
Why won't it work? I've sent all the ghosts away! Did one of them escape me?
So, did I miss something, or did that radically not go as planned?
It was Elle. She was at the masquerade. She knew about the ritual. She knew exactly what was going to happen.
How could she have known?
Because Emily and Charlotte lied to us. They had to have known she was here.
You think vacuumed screaming back to a hellish nightmarescape is part of their plan? Sorry. We will figure this out. We will find Laugh. Why would Elle do this?
You heard her. To punish me for what I did. By stealing my life.
But she can't steal anything. She's trapped here just like us unless all the ghosts move on.
But the ghosts are gone. All of them except Elle and Charlotte.
Elle can't leave until Charlotte is also sent back to the Nightmare Land, like all the other ghosts. Laugh thwarted her plan.
And now that my spark's in the brooch and Ella has the brooch, if she gets rid of Charlotte, she could become human and leave.
We have to find her now.
That's easier said than done.
Now this scene bugged me to no end. There's no new information given until Mel walks in. As an exercise, let's now look at the same scene again, but heavily edited down, and see what it does.
Why won't it work? I've sent all the ghosts away!
Obviously, this entrance would be shot differently.
Miss Sheridan is gone, girl.
Yeah, not to mention we don't exactly know how to extract a life force from a magical brooch.
I'm not saying this different cut solves every problem, but I find that the additional exposition only clogs and make the plot more confusing. We can show Elle's anger and realizing her plan didn't work and maybe have her poof away out of frustration. Then we can cut to Mel entering the room and telling the news she can't find Elle, which is objective number 1. Then Carmilla instantly lays down problem number 2. How do we abstract her spark out of the brooch? That's all that's needed. By constantly talking about what we already saw, it feels like the writers didn't take the audience serious. As if we're unable to comprehend simple storylines and every detail needs to be rehashed again and again. Of course we need to stop Elle. Of course we need to get LaFontaine back. Of course we don't want Carmilla to die. This makes perfect sense and the audience doesn't need to remind her. We're already on your side. To keep this video a dialogue and not just things I disliked about the Carmilla movie, I think it's important to explain why I'm making this video in the first place. After all, I've been doing the CinemaSins knockoff Carmilla Sins for all 3 seasons, and it's my most viewed series on my channel. So it seems pretty stupid to kill it off since it always brings in a pretty big audience. What I've noticed firsthand is that the CinemaSins format is incredibly limited. Snappy one-liners work, but constructive criticism doesn't fit well. Any thought that takes longer than 2 sentences to express and is even slightly nuanced falls flat. I think you can see me struggle with the format in the past. I personally got drawn to the series not just for the main romance. I also really loved the Ginger Squad and the surrealistic and fantastical universe. Season 3 is heavily focused on Holstein to such an extent that it started to bug me. The arc of side characters felt rushed or got completely shoved to the side. And in my Carmilla Sins video you can see me try to criticize it. Yet again, nobody reacts to Laura being alive except Carmilla. Looking back, I feel pretty mean. I was clearly pissed off but didn't have the space to explain why. I just sound like a dick because, and this is another thing that made me feel uncomfortable with Carmilla Sins, as a sin narrator you are representing your criticism as an objective truth. This actually shows a lack of understanding of film and media studies on CinemaSins' part. As I have, and still am studying in this field, I can tell you honestly that every paper I've ever written had to represent my own perspective of a piece of media. I'm using theories of well-established academics either by agreeing or going against their theory to strengthen my own argument. Probably using Foucault. Or McLuhan. Possibly both. What I'm getting at is that there's no such thing as objective truth in this field. Sure, there are many theories and certain language within the field to communicate facts. Like this shot, that's a lateral tracking shot. That's a fact. It's a form of grammar so everyone in the field knows what you're talking about. But as soon as I make an argument about this shot, say, I believe the usage of a lateral tracking shot here is to transition smoothly between 2 scenes. It is strong because it shows some time has passed between the scenes, but that the events are still linked. Are we figuring out what's going on with Carmilla? We effectively introduce the LaFontaine and Perry in one shot. We instantly know that they're trying to help find out what's going on. The shot is weak, however, because the lateral track has an awkward starting point. It tracks out of nothing basically, halfway down a wall. Now I'm making an argument, but notice I am not judging whether the shot is good or bad. I'm contemplating if the shot was the most effective one. In this case I'd say that yes, out of all possible shots, this is a decent choice. Is it a masterpiece? Far from. But it keeps the rhythm in the cut, and that's important. Approaching media criticism this way, the critic is left more vulnerable. I cannot distance myself from the media or my criticism, because it's inherently my own. It can be rebutted, or preferably can be used within a larger dialogue. On the flip side, pointing out mistakes and poking fun at movies while pretending to be above the movie itself is really shallow and dumbs down film criticism as a whole. My goal is not to pwn Carmilla. I have the utmost respect for the cast and crew and have made lifelong friendships through this fandom. Instead, I want to engage on a deep level with the material and analyzing its strong and weak points. Thanks, nerd! Can we go back to analyzing the movie now? So let's talk Laura. Yeah, I'm not done with her yet. Can we roll the clip of her motivation one more time?
We can't just let her take Carmilla's life!
Funnily enough, this isn't about Carmilla or Laura or an internal relationship anxiety at all. Carmilla is already over 300 years old, and a good chunk of their relationship, she was still a vampire. At the time, Laura didn't really seem to have a problem with that. So what Laura is saying here raises a lot of questions and reflects an incredibly important question in universe that is left unanswered. What the fuck is the role of vampires in this world? I was under the impression that vampires are somewhat rare to encounter, but an existing and acknowledged species. Laura's videos even went viral, so the outside world must know about them. Besides, Laura talks openly about LaFontaine and Perry having a business to investigate the paranormal, and highlights Danny being a vampire rights activist. So clearly there isn't a lid on the whole vampire thing. Then why does Laura get so upset when Carmilla turns back into a vampire? Okay, they can grow old together, but that isn't a guarantee for any couple. Later on we get to the crux of Laura's anxieties.
And grandkids. What is that gonna look like if you can live like you're 25 forever?
Like I said, Laura's anxieties aren't actually about their relationship, it's about how other people might perceive their relationship. Which is odd because established species within the universe? Question mark? I'm sure if you explain to people one person is a vampire, it will be fine.
Some people freak out a bit about the age difference. They think, what's this 96-year-old lady doing with a guy 4 times her age?
Unless an interspecies relationship is frowned upon or even forbidden by law. And Laura aging without Carmilla would reveal their secret. But this is never even touched upon in canon. Neither have we seen the slightest bias in any of the side characters when it came to Holstein's relationship. Not even in Kier saying, wait, a vampire and a human chick, isn't that like illegal or something? Which suggests there isn't such bias at all. Unless we forget there already is a massive age difference. Carmilla is the old hag in this relationship, not Laura. This was never a problem. Why should it now? Which brings us back to this point of conflict between Perry and Laura and why it reads so weak. I understand Perry's motivations. Having a best friend / partner being zapped into a place where they have to relive their worst nightmare over and over again sounds fucking terrible. Laura's object of interest seems not that strong in comparison, because it's not like Camilla's actually, dead. She's just undead. Again. Which sucks, but Laura still gets to be with her love at the end of the day. Perry doesn't. And when LaFontaine does get rescued eventually, they're kind of shrugging it off like, nah, no biggie Frosh. I usually disappear halfway through the story anyway, so this is like my regular Tuesday. So yeah, let's talk about that, because there most certainly isn't much room for Laugh or any of the other side characters. Yes, they have their place in the story, and yes, I am aware they are side characters, but I don't know, something about them just reads shallow to me. And I wonder how much of a difference it would have made if they had given them a proper introduction instead of this. If you introduce them inside the story, you also have to justify their place in that scene and thus in the story itself. That grounds a character. This is why I find this vlog sloppy narration, even though I must admit it establishes a lot of important details. But like I said, it's a shortcut. We meet these characters before they even appear on screen and become relevant to the story. When do they become relevant to the story? LaFontaine and Perry become relevant right here, when they are trying to help find out what's going on with Camilla's park. Mel and Kiers get introduced in the park. Why there? I don't know, but hey, it's a nice day, it's Toronto, it's outside, I'm not completely heartless, I get why the crew wanted to shoot here. Even so, Mel and Kiers don't really make an impact on the story until roughly 30 minutes into the movie, when they find the Bronte sisters being suspicious. And that's fine, not all characters immediately have to have an impact on the storyline, but the side characters are kind of floating around Carmilla and Laura the whole time without doing much else. I mean, Mel gets to kiss a girl, that's always fun, and LaFontaine and Perry are having this squabble over their company. But neither of these stories do anything to further the plot. They're just there, going along with things. The time that could have been dedicated to flesh out some side characters is instead reserved to Carmilla and Laura making out. A lot. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but after so many times, it becomes kind of redundant. We get it, they are in love. So these extra kisses are pretty much fan service, don't kill me please! I think this is the biggest disagreement between what the creators wanted out of the movie and what I would have liked to see. Looking at my own analysis, it seems I would have preferred a fun adventure movie that unravels the mystery and dives deeper into Camilla's past. I love me some Holstein moments, really I do, but they aren't as important to me than the story itself. The creators, on the other hand, seem to prefer Holstein moments, so they can bring a lot of women kisses to the very little representation queer women have. A very valid reason. Thus the adventure of the movie gets the backseat here over Holstein's relationship. That's the main focus of this movie. This becomes abundantly clear in the 3-minute sex scene between Laura and Carmilla. In a 1.5 hour movie, 3 minutes focusing on one specific thing is quite a lot, therefore making it an essential part of the movie. This movie is about Holstein first. The reason I mention this is because I skipped this scene because I'm both sex repulsed and asexual. So technically I watched a different movie skipping this scene. Still, even if I did watch this sex scene for this analysis, I could tell you nothing of value. I cannot compare it to any other fictional sex scenes because I tend to avoid sex stuff altogether. With that said, I still want to acknowledge that there are plenty of queer women and MBs who are desperate for a genuine sex scene between two fictional queer characters that isn't fetishized. Did Carmilla the movie did that? Based on the social media response, I at least assume it did. Which is good, and I'm really happy that so many other people got something out of that. But obviously this does color my perception of the movie, and I don't think it would be fair to leave out this significant detail from my analysis. Like I said, analysis always come from a certain perspective, not an all-knowing God narrator. In this final segment, I want to talk about pacing and tone. I'm aware that these are two broad and separate subjects, but you'll see in a minute why I bundled them together. The way I describe the pacing of this movie is a car that keeps hitting the brake once it has built up some speed. This also has to do with the aforementioned re-explaining what we already saw in the previous scene. But it mostly has to do with the awkward tonal switches between comedy and drama. The comedy in this movie is a bit of a hit and miss. One note is more of a pet peeve of mine, it's not particular to this movie, so you can take this with a grain of salt. But what you see in a lot of modern television is the reference joke. I'm definitely not opposed to references to other media or people in movies and TV. But the tricky part of references is people not getting the reference. And yes, even how obvious it may seem to you, there will always be at least one audience member who doesn't get it. Like this line.
I'm very Lewis Carroll.
I have no idea who this Lewis person is, and so Carmilla's line falls flat to me. A rule of thumb I try to maintain myself is to make the joke work on its own without having to understand the reference. Or at least lay enough of a foundation so the audience has an idea what the joke could be referencing to. Again, small pet peeve and something that annoyed / confused me in the web series too and many other shows. And aside from some slight confusion, these reference jokes can be overlooked since most of the time they don't add much to begin with. Far more relevant and specific to the Carmilla movie is the usages of comedy to break build-up tensions that cause the stops in the story's pace. See, on the one side we have the campy humor from the web series, and on the other side we have the gothic mystery and drama from the novella. Which makes the synopsis of this movie absolutely brilliant. Going to a haunted house and having Carmilla face her past and explore the relationship with her ex Elle that was heavily hinted at in the web series and was part of the original novella? Sign me the fuck up! But with these two translations of completely different media and genre comes a heavy responsibility that's hard to pull off. And I'm not arguing that it's impossible to blend these two genres, but in the case of the Carmilla movie, it disrupts the flow. Because every time the story is about to pick up, there's a joke. Let's take a look at the ghost ladies. This is how they get introduced.
Told her these were gonna come in handy.
Ghosts! The swamp is full of ghosts! 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 Everyone, come on! Haunted house! Totally haunted! Run, weirdo! Very desperate! Go! God, stop! Come on! Ghosts are mine! Guys?
And the cherry on top?
Yes, we are the victims of Carmilla Karnstein.
Fuck yes! Here is the conflict and tension I've been waiting for almost half an hour. What happens next?
And we'd like to invite you to dinner.
Oh. Okay. Then what's with the dramatic entrance? This whole introduction falls flat instantly. If they were indeed happily waiting for Camilla's arrival, this wouldn't have happened. Instead, they should have stand excitingly by the door, kissing the gang on both cheeks while handing Carmilla a bouquet of flowers. She arrived! Huzzah! The humor doesn't mingle well with the drama, because in this case, the humor cuts off the conflict. And once again, this is sadly a running theme. A misplaced joke interrupts the conflict, and we're back to zero. Charlotte and Emily are being suspicious, but it's only to reveal a surprise party. Elle threatens Laura with a knife, but one reference joke later...
Do we really have to do this Nightmare on Elm Street crap?
I mean, it's fine. It doesn't bother me. In all these examples, a joke interrupts the tension it was building up. Now let's compare those to this. See, now I'd say this visual joke works, because it doesn't undermine the actual tension that was built up in the scene. We still don't know what Charlotte and Emily are up to. The joke is that Mel and Kears are in plain sight, and the sisters don't see them. I can't help but feel this drama cut to humor is so much at Charlotte's and Emily's expense that it even undermines their characters. The gang treats them as suspicious, while the movie itself paints them as fairly innocent. The only thing they really hide is Elle being in a mansion, but that's because they believe Elle is genuine about the ritual and just wants to hide from Carmilla. They too get blindsided by Elle's plan. Basically, we're 50 minutes into the movie and everyone so far has been friendly and helpful. There's almost no tension whatsoever except for Laura's creepy dreams, but she's been through weirder shit. So 50 minutes in and Elle finally becomes an active player. Elle is easily the best thing about this movie. And not just because the Dominique hype is real. And it is real.
We also have some new major players, including Dominique, Kara, and Grace. Dominique.
Hi,
Dominique.
Wherever you are.
And yes, Elle has been an extreme fandom fixation since episode 20 of season 1. But what makes Elle the best thing is because she brings actual conflict to the movie. Whereas everyone else goes along with Laura and Camilla's wishes, Elle says no. Elle says fuck you. Elle holds Carmilla accountable for what she did, and in a movie where everyone otherwise agrees without much objections, it is amazing to watch. The best scene hands down is when Elle finds out Carmilla is a vampire. Both Natasha and Dominique give incredible acting performances, and we get little breadcrumbs beforehand without losing any of the impact when the actual scene arrives. I cannot emphasize enough how much I love this scene. The only weak point about Elle's storyline is that she's kinda stuck repeating her wish for freedom over and over again. It becomes so atonal as the movie goes on, by the end even the characters are sick of it.
Your life. You want your life. Yeah, we know.
And I'm not saying that just because the movie is a bit of a tonal mess, you can no longer enjoy it. Hell no! My favorite Disney movie is a complete tonal clusterfuck, and I still adore it.
And let her taste the fires of hell, or else let her be mine and mine alone. And since you're shaped like a croissant is...
Just because I think this scene...
How could she have known?
...is unnecessary, doesn't negate this.
Look at me!
Or this shot. And I even like and dislike things in the same scene. This fade in and out is trying to create a sense of liveliness on the dance floor and conceal the fact that there are like 10 people in this room. But god do I love the costumes and set design. Just because I'm focusing on the weaker aspects of the movie doesn't mean there aren't great performances. I know I've been bitching a lot about Laura, but massive kudos to Elise Bauman because she gives such a raw and one of the most heart-wrenching performances in this entire movie. I thought the little romance blossoming between Charlotte and Mel was really cute, and at this point I think the will they won't they? No they won't. Relationship between Perry and LaFontaine is pretty amusing. You could even make a strong case for love being aromantic, so may I suggest a QPR between those two? Nope. Just me who wants that? Okay. In the end, counting mistakes is not really something you can do. That's why a format like CinemaSins doesn't contribute anything useful to media analysis. And I hope in this video I have argued well enough why dialogue is much more fruitful than good or bad categories or even something simple like star ratings. But you can start a dialogue with just one speaker, so let the discourse commence. Okay, but can I just say one more thing about this fucking scene? If you're interested in people analyzing movies, I highly recommend Lindsay Ellis, whose recent long-form video essays have been raising the YouTube bar to a new high. Seriously, I cannot recommend her videos enough. They are both well-researched and hilarious. Also check out Every Frame a Painting. Sadly, they announced a few months ago that they will no longer continue uploading. But if you're interested in movies, editing or just good content on YouTube, you can treat this as a beautiful library. I've been thinking about doing more of these essays and I've got a couple of ideas, but they take a long time to make and it's quite a shift from what I used to upload. So let me know if you'd be interested in that or not. And I'd like to give a special thank you to all my Patreon supporters. I'm just kidding, I'm too unpopular for that.